Dance Between Grief and Gratitude, a sermonic poem inspired by a Jesus story, a Marie Howe poem, and Finger Lakes poet Lisa Nichols' Eating the Sun. When grief begins, it's anything but ordinary. It is a trauma landing with the force of a horse sitting down on its rider. But eventually, it works its way into the ordinary, that old grief. We start talking to the dead person we miss, as if he or she was standing next to us. And as if it's not weird that we are talking out loud to someone who has died. We just do it because it has become ordinary. When our heart finds its place in gratitude, grief becomes ordinary. When gratitude becomes big enough, or deep enough, or just plain solid enough, it holds the grief. Before the ordinary, grief holds everything else, including gratitude. So it isn't ordinary yet. It is still the dragon guarding the entrance to our mind and heart and letting nothing pass without it first being singed or outright scorched. But one day, the dragon goes missing, and the other things in the cave of our mind and heart start interacting with the grief, and the grief becomes conversational. And then, if we allow it, gratitude for the person who has left us grows and grows and grows and starts to collect the grief in its arms. The grief is still there, but now it's held by gratitude and becomes more ordinary. Then one day, without warning, without planning, we are living again. It feels odd at first, but then gradually we are thrilled to be living again. Can you imagine what it would be like if we all got to do what Luke says Jesus did? You know, die, and then walk around living. Well, if we did that, then we would all write poetry like Mary Oliver. We would walk around savoring every small thing. We would rarely notice when we were alive, that we rarely noticed when we were alive, and we just touch it, or kiss it, or hold it. A single blade of grass would be so marvelous, it would make us cry. A snowflake would take our breath away. A toad hopping in the grass, or a worm writhing in the soil, or the diamonds the sun scatters on the morning waves would make us swoon. We would walk around savoring every small, delicious molecule of life, just dripping with gratitude. Thinking about Jesus being like Mary Oliver, walking around looking and touching and oohing and eyeing at every small and delicate thing that never begged a notice before, makes me want to try it. What if, on Monday mornings, we oogled and savored? What if we slowly ate the sunrise? What if we very slowly breathed in the scent of love? What if we ran our fingers along a smooth wood finish and stuttered helplessly over every grain? What if we peeled an apple and sobbed at its clean, simple lines and stunning colors. 5 minutes. Only 5 minutes. 5 minutes once a week, savoring the world as if we were the dead, given one last chance to encounter bodily life through gratitude. Oh, to be Jesus back from the dead, savoring every small thing life has to offer, and getting blown away by beauty, even on the battlefield of grief. Maybe that is what resurrection is. To come to life in the midst of life and fall head over heels in gratitude. This essay from Last Will and Testament is entitled Autumn. My neighbor's black-eyed Susan are still vibrant. Their round black eyes are bigger now, bulging out from the yellow faces. But that chroma of yellow, no human concocted hue comes close to that screaming lemon mango egg yolk citrus gift of Mother Nature. Thankfully, our lavender and verbena are popping purple in this newly ordained mum season, but the writing is on the wall for gardens everywhere. Our flowers are on hospice care. The autumnal equinox arrives here at 3:31 p.m. today, but we knew it was happening before it was announced, didn't we? One day, back in August, something told us the fingers of autumn were reaching into the veil of summer. A certain touch of wind, a scent, the color of a leaf, a flock of birds, maybe even a shadow cast at the wrong time of day. Though we had our summer clothes on and were soaking up the joy that the hot season brings, there was an ever so slight knock on the door. Our bodies get us ready before we enter any season, even before we are cognizant of its arrival. It takes 10 to 20 days to adjust from one season to the next. So 62 degrees in early autumn feels chilly, even though in early April it feels like a feast of warmth. This is homeostasis, the brain regulating the body to maintain our equilibrium. While our skin is the receptor, our brain is the barometer regulating blood flow, sweat glands, and heart rate as the seasons change around us. Right now, with autumn arriving, our blood vessels are constricting ever so slightly to preserve heat. The brain sets our thermostat to preserve the core temperature of our bodies, homeostasis. Homeostasis is our body's ability to maintain a fairly constant internal temperature and biological environment, even though external changes are taking place all around us. Our brains use feedback from what's going on in the atmosphere to adjust our biology to compensate for those changes. While we may feel vulnerable to potential attacks from COVID, cancer, or Lyme disease, it's amazing how well our body is regulated and is able to adjust to the massive seasonal changes of the earth. Autumnal nostalgia is a real thing upon which the commercial drive for pumpkin spice, and Halloween depends. It's deeply ingrained in our olfactory sense, in our olfactory nerves and memory. Higher temperatures in summer heighten the number of smells our noses receive, while cooler temperatures diminish the quality and the complexity of the odors around us. Thus, the cooler temperatures of autumn empty the stage for the aromas of fall to dominate. They have less competition, and we associate them with this time of year. Dying leaves exhale their last breath and collectively fill the air with gases, just like ozone is released from the soil after a good rain. There are thousands and millions of things dying all around us. Their crunching bodies beneath our shoes crackle the decay of the lives lost. The scent of all that death, moist and fragrant in the soil, cleaves to our memories, a lifetime of memories. Everything we remember from the autumns of our childhood, youth, and longer is a ghostly presence annealed to the sense of decay. Hayrides, bonfires, candy apples, and football games, all attached to the aromas of autumn. Take a moment and stop and appreciate how amazing it all is. this stands alone on its own, especially for Thanksgiving, but it is also a little bit of a tease, a promo of Advent to come. I want to share this very brief thought about hope. And in so doing, I want to tilt toward a three-part series for Advent about good and evil. Actually, about God and evil. Or maybe it's about God and good. Well, I guess you can tell that I haven't finished it yet. Anyway, assuming I finish it, the series begins next week, and it fits like a fist in a boxing glove with Advent. Or maybe it's more like a hand in a mitten. Or maybe, never mind. Hope. Hope is topic enough for the moment, for this moment. But here's how it's connected to this series for Advent. You see, we usually talk about good and evil as if they are opposed and always diametrically opposed to one another. But I want to propose a different understanding of good and evil from the traditional Pauline Augustinian dualism, and in doing so, it may change how we think about hope. To begin with, we almost always define hope, good, and evil from a very self-centered frame of reference. Good is usually what is good for me and mine, while things that are hurtful and destructive to me and mine are evil. So philosophically, there has been a category of natural evil, and that includes such things as volcanic eruptions and tidal waves that have destroyed human lives and habitats. And then there is moral evil, war crimes, murders, home-wrecking marital affairs, to name a few. Given the myth of original sin, it was possible to claim things like racism and misogynist violence as either or both natural or moral. I want to take a different tact. If we continue to think of the creation as we have as made in the image of God, as an outward and visible sign of creation's inward and invisible holiness, then we need to talk about the wholeness and fragmentation of it instead of good and evil. Why? Because the nature of the creation is as a ecosystemic wholeness, and that which decouples or fragments the relations within the ecosystems is anti-holy, or whatever we want to call it. It turns out that what we think of as hope is often mere wishful thinking, as in wishing against all likelihood or truth that something could be different, or that something different would happen. So, for example, we wish for world peace and an end to social violence. That's not likely anytime soon, if ever. As a species, we can try to manage our behavior, but we cannot remake who and what we are without some pretty scary human engineering. So to keep wishing for something that isn't possible will eventually lead us to cynicism, and that will lead us to hopelessness. Hope, however, is something different. It asks what wholeness in any given ecosystem may look like or include, and then goes about nurturing those relationships. So, for example, we now know that lumber companies planting rows of trees as if it's corn, where they have clear-cut the forest, ancient forests in fact, hoping to regrow them, well, that's just wishful thinking. But studying the old growth forests can teach us how to nurture the biological connections that knit a forest together into a healthy network of life. There's real hope for restoring forests once we give up the wishful thinking for simply doing what we want to do. Whether it's the the high drama dance between light and dark matter in the far-flung reaches of interstellar space, or the exquisite intricacies of fungus weaving together root systems of different species of trees in the forest. This cosmos is built upon a principle of relationships woven into wholeness. Death and violence may or may not be part of that wholeness. We cannot judge the good and the bad of such things based solely upon what we consider good for us, because as it turns out, us, us, is much bigger than our own family or our own nation or even our own species. Okay, well, you see, this has gotten pretty big pretty fast, and I didn't really mean for that to happen, so let me leave it at this for now about hope. Authentic hope, as distinguished from wishful thinking, asks the questions of how and where we can nurture the web of relationships that we have been asked to steward. And what is really encouraging, really hopeful, is that there are always ways to nurture those relationships and build greater wholeness. Because nurturing the balance of an ecosystem is always working with smallness. Sometimes really, really small, tiny ways. As a species and as a particular people, we are often the source of fragmentation in some really big ways. Some of us are colossus when it comes to tearing things apart. But healing and renewing the fabric of connection within any given ecosystem is always done in small, incremental steps. It's always small work. And it is work we have the power and the ability to do. Always. Almost any time. And that's why it's hopeful. We can always be about the work of healing. Always. Okay, I'm going to leave it there until next week in the season of Advent, when we will consider good and evil and God, and perhaps in a different light, an Advent light. Please know this Thanksgiving that I am grateful to you for being part of the Subversive Preacher community, for sharing these thoughts with other people you know, for even purchasing books if you do. I am deeply, deeply grateful to be part of your life in whatever small way that becomes possible. So thank you. And as always, peace be with you.